Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to When the Dust Settles. My name is Pico Conway, and today we're going to compare the European Union single market and the African Continental free trade area. I'm doing this because this video because in the last video I talked about South Africa, where Nigerians, Ghanaians, Zimbabweans, Mozambican, and other African nationals are being attacked in xenophobic violence in South Africa. If Africans are not able to do business in other African countries, if Africans are not able to live in other African countries, if Africans are not freely able to study in other African countries, then what the whole essence of AfCFTA? So today I'm going to compare, as I always do, I'm going to compare the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is the largest free trade area in the world, with the European Union single market. Many African policymakers view the European Union as the most advanced example of regional integration, while the AfCFTA, that is African Continental Free Trade Area, represents Africa's attempt to create a similar continental economic space adapted to Africa's reality. Now let's look at the historical origins of AfCFTA. The African Free Trade Area emerged from decades of Africans' efforts to promote continental unity. Key milestones include the creation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963, the establishment of the African Union in 2002, the adoption of the Agenda 2063 of the African Union, the signing of AfCFTA agreement in Kigali, Rwanda in 2018. The AfCFTA was designed to address long-standing problems. African countries often trade more with Europe, Asia, North America than with one another. Think about that for a little bit. The European single market, on the other hand, evolved over several decades. Major milestones of the European single market include the creation of the European Coal and Steel Community in 1951, the signing of the Treaty of Rome in 1957, the launch of the European single market in 1993, the creation of the euro currency in 1999. European integration followed a gradual path from economic cooperation to a deeper political integration. And I'm talking about this because of South Africa. What happened in South Africa against other Africans? The core objectives of Africa Free Trade Area is to create a continental free trade area, increase intra-African trade, regional value chains, industrialization, economic transformation, and the after focus is primarily economic. The European single market, on the other hand, aims to create a free movement of people, something that AfTA wants. Free movement of services, free movement of capital, and free movement of people. South Africa, we talk about South Africa. I don't want to generalize about the thing that happened, that every South African is doing what is happening in South Africa, that is attacking other foreign national Africans. These are commonly known as the four freedoms in Europe. The EU's objectives extend beyond economic and include political integration and common governance structure. If you look at the level of integration, this is perhaps the most important difference between AfTA and the EU. AfTA is currently a free trade area, rules-based trade network. Member states within AfTA remain largely sovereign over immigration, and we're talking about South Africa right now, where they are chasing after other people who look like them. Currency, they use their own. All the members of AfTA use their own currency. Tax policy, every member use their own tax policy. Trade policy toward non-members. Labor regulation. So most of the members can just leave from. I can just leave from Liberia and go to Ivory Coast to work, as within the EU. There is no continental custom union or common currency within AfTA. European single market, on the other hand, is much deeper. Many EU countries share common regulations, common standards, common competition rules, common trade policies. That makes it easy for members, for their citizens to leave from one place to another country, live and work. And a common currency is used in much of EU bloc. European Union therefore operates at a significantly higher level of integration than AfTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area. AfTA itself does not automatically provide freedom of free movement of people within the continent. Africa is still negotiating broader mobility arrangement. Some regional blocs permit movement, like the Economic Community of West African States. There's some mobility of people to move within the sub-region. I think East Africa Community does the same thing as well. However, continental mobility remains limited. So what is happening in South Africa would not have happened if at all we could move freely, work freely within the continent of Africa. EU, on the other hand, citizens of most EU countries can live in another EU country, as I said earlier, work in another EU country, study within another EU country, start businesses. That point is important because South Africans are attacking other nationals, other Africans who are doing businesses in that country throughout the union. This is one of the most important, powerful integration tools of the European Union. Africa's intra-continental trade remains relatively low. Africa intra-continental trade is generally estimated at around between 14 to 18% of total trade, African trade. Much of Africa's export remains oil natural as a mineral, agricultural commodities. A major AfCFTA goal is increasing manufacturing and value-added production. The European Union is one of the most integrated trading regions in the world. Internal EU trade accounts for about 60 to 70% of total trade amongst member states. Think about that for a second. Africa, 1.4 billion people. EU, about 500 million people. But the trade is about 60 to 70% amongst members. European economies are heavily interconnected through manufacturing supply chain. Take for example, German components, Polish assembly, French logistics, and Italian design may all contribute to a single product. So look at maybe Liberian component, South Africa assembly, Kenya logistic, and maybe Mozambique design, all contributing towards a single product. Then if you look at infrastructure integration, is one of Africa's biggest obstacles. Many African countries lack sufficient rail links, highways, ports, electricity interconnections. These are things that are lacking, of which trade among African countries is so low. Even travel within African countries is so low. We don't have good road networks in Africa. When I came to US, one of my friends would ask me, have you traveled to Sierra Leone? Have you traveled to Ghana? I said no, because it's not easy traveling through to those countries. Roads are bad. Immigration systems are so tight, and those barriers hinder inter-African movements. But Africa is getting there. There are some trans-African highway networks, energy. You have African West African power pools. These projects are essential for AfCFTA too. But if you look at the European Union, when it comes to infrastructure, the European Union has spent decades building interconnected infrastructure through high-speed rails, cross-border highways, interconnected energy networks, share aviation regulation. The physical infrastructure supporting trade is far more advanced within the European Union. But as I said, I'm doing this video because if AfCFTA can create the situation where Africans are able to move within Africa, do business, live anywhere they want to live, intra-African trade will increase significantly. Intra-African trade will increase significantly. So after we talk about the situation in South Africa, after Secretariat that is based in Ghana, I don't know how they engage in South Africa to say, no man, these are Africans. Stop attacking fellow Africans. AfCFTA doesn't have that power. But if you look at the European Union, European Union possesses extensive international institutions. The European Commission, the European Parliament, the European Council, the Court of Justice of the European Union, and even the European Central Bank. These institutions can influence national policy in ways that AU institutions currently cannot. And when you look at legal authority, after national governments remain independent, so AfCFTA can't even say anything to South Africa. Most decisions required state consensus. So AfCFTA cannot sue South Africa for the kind of a thing they do attacking African businesses. Domestic implementation. The AfCFTA does not override national laws in the way EU law often does. A defining characteristics of the European Union is this principle of EU law supremacy. So when applicable, EU law can take precedence over conflicting national laws. This gives the European Union a level of authority far beyond the current African integration mechanism. Folks, many supporters of deeper African integration sees AfCFTA as a first step toward a future that could include greater labor mobility, stronger continental institutions, integrated infrastructure, common industrial policy, expanded regional supply chains, possibly monetary cooperation in some form. However, most African governments currently support gradual integration rather than immediate political union. That we have been hearing, on which the African Union is still at the same level it was since 1963. So, when you compare the European Union single market with the African Union AfCFTA, if you compare the two systems, the simple way to understand it is this. AfCFTA is free trade area. AfCFTA is free trade area. Primarily economic integration, economic and political integration, no common currency. Euro is used within many European USA member states of the EU. After limited labor mobility, EU extensive labor mobility, national trade authority remains strong, EU significant share trade authority. AfCFTA is just at the early stage of development, and the EU has more than 70 years of integration. Focus is on building continental trade, while the EU focus is maintaining deeper integration. AfCFTA, if you look at AfCFTA, the AfCFTA today is roughly comparable to where the EU was during the early stages of integration under the European Community, European Economic Community, rather than modern EU. The EU single market represents one of the deepest forms of economic integration has ever achieved between sovereign states. AfCFTA, on the other hand, is still laying the foundation for continental integration by reducing trade barriers, harmonizing regulations, and encouraging cross-border investment. Whether Africa eventually develops institutions approaching the depth of the European Union will depend on political will, infrastructure development, economic conveyance, and willingness of African states to transform or transfer greater authority to continental institutions over the coming decades. For many advocates like us of Pan-African integration, AfCFTA is not a final destination. It is the starting point. I agree that European Union take years to reach to where they are. But Africa has been doing this forever. And some of the things that happen in South Africa, South Africa is at the forefront, but other Africans, it's difficult traveling in other African countries. It's difficult living in other African countries. We got to understand that the only way that we can move forward is for us to put our resources together. But attacking other Africans who are living in South Africa, burning down the businesses, every time, year in, year out, xenophobic violence against people who looked at them, people who stood with them when they were oppressed, people who hosted them when they were being chased out of South Africa. Now these people are their enemies. But this is one thing I want to advise African nations as well. You have to improve the living conditions in your home country, so your people can live there too. While we also have to break down the barriers that make us to look at other people who don't look like us as the enemy. To look at people who don't look at us as the reason for which we are having economic hardship in our country, instead of blaming the government policies that make us to be the way we are. Folks, Africa is moving forward. What happened in South Africa doesn't represent all South Africans. There are many people in South Africa. I was listening to this guy, Malema. Although I don't like some of his policies, but I think on the issue of xenophobic violence in South Africa, he spoke very clearly that Africa needs each other to survive or to succeed. We do. Liberians need Sierra Leoneans. Ghanaians need Mozambikians. Ivorians need Burkinabes. We need each other to survive. I spoke about the Senegal River Basin. How 3 countries share one river. All of the infrastructure that are there along that river belongs and shared by all those 3 countries. This is how Africans have to live with each other. We need each other to survive. And the situation I have in South Africa is just been happening by people, ordinary people, who think that the economic hardship is because few Africans are coming in the country to work or make business there. We got to understand that we have to be able to move within the continent. We have to emulate the European 4 freedoms: freedom of goods, freedom of services, freedom of people, and the other 4. So the 4 freedoms, we have to understand that we have to adapt those things. Africa got to move forward, but we got to move forward together. South African xenophobic violence that has been perpetrated by ordinary South Africans against other Africans must be condemned, not just by the South African government, but by the African Union itself. Folks, my name is Pico Conway. And if you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to subscribe to When the Dust Settles. I will talk to you next week. Bye for now.